members. While the whole world is slowly getting out of the grip of the dreaded pandemic somehow, for some reasons still not clear or unknown, we in Kerala are still really struggling to get a foothold with the numbers going against us by the day. We are indeed going through tough times, curfew and whatnot. Let us begin the session with a minute silence and a prayer to Almighty that we all remain safe and healthy and all of us overcome the challenging times, but also especially a word of prayer for all those who have suffered and still suffering during these tragic days. Continue to be seated wherever you are and close your eyes for a minute. Thank you and good evening once again to our guest of the evening, Mr. Premkumar Seshadri, former Executive Vice Chairman and Managing Director of HCL Infosystems Limited, past President and Program Committee Chair, Mr. S.R. Nair, past Presidents, Mr. A.K. Nair, Mr. Raj Mohan Nair, I can't see any more, Senior Vice President, Ms. Nirmala Lilly, Secretary Jomon George, other managing committee members. I could see Mr. Hari Kumar there, other members, if they are present, not visible to me, members of KMA and other LMAs, students and invited guests. Good to see we have a fairly good attendance already today, and I'm sure it will swell even further as we progress. We have a very relevant topic for the session today, and that too with a very prolific speaker to address us. The response has to be good. Well, this is how KMA has been pulling on in these troubled times to keep our members engaged, remain positive, and provide with meaningful deliberations and events of utility. Well, as I had mentioned earlier, situation around us is still quite gloomy, though we are getting signs of hope in the horizon as many parts of our country are slowly restoring normalcy. Let us continue to be vigilant and follow all the protocols aimed at avoiding the chance of getting infected and thus not adding to the so-called TPR. In spite of all the troubles and turmoil of the pandemic, KMA has been continuously bringing to you very many events of purpose on a regular basis. StartCon discussion series presenting successful startup companies, very meaningful and focused women managers forum activities at least once a month, enriching sessions exclusively for the MSMEs, and management education programs we were trying to serve suiting everyone's palate. We even conducted a week-long management week celebrations during February, a management students convention with over 800 B-School students participating, 2 memorial lectures with exceptional speakers already conducted, organized a virtual run, the KMA run with nearly 1,000 participants from across the country, propagating the theme, our annual theme, responsible management, and also conducted one digital summit in a hybrid format. In addition to this, we have started a series of workshops for the MSME sector with an opening meet that was inaugurated by the State Industries Minister, Mr. P. Rajiv himself, and continuing with specific workshops enlightening the participants on various schemes, benefits and offers available with central, state and banking institutions catering to the MSMEs. Well, coming to today's LeaderTalks session, a program committee headed by past president and corporate mentor, Mr. S.R. Nair, and our team have been conceiving regular programs under the banner of KMA LeaderTalks. We have presented a multitude of programs all these months, and this month itself, we have already had one of the startup conversations, a fireside chat with one successful woman entrepreneur who cares for the environment by saving water, by washing cars without even a single drop of water being used, and a very interesting panel discussion on an eye-opener of a topic, managing a geriatric Kerala, which was meant basically to enlighten the public, media, and the government about a looming threat of a very swiftly aging state of Kerala. Well, this is the 17th of the LeaderTalks session, which we are having in this KMA year. All these sessions were carefully selected with renowned speakers from the industry and academia, sharing their domain knowledge and their invaluable experience with our audience. Speakers were from diverse sectors and topics were topical and timely. And today we have yet another session with contemporary relevance and interest. And the topic says it all: psychological safety at work, productivity, and innovation imperative. While the entire pyramid of executives and managers of an enterprise or business is going through such complex times now, psychological comforts are eluding for both juniors and seniors alike. But what is psychological safety in the workplace? Well, paraphrasing the definition, it is a belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or humiliated for speaking up with your team. The others of the team will not embarrass, reject, or punish you for speaking up. And the importance of this sense of confidence and safety is paramount for the productivity enhancement as well as for keeping newer ideas and innovations to flow in continuously. So, a very timely topic going to be dwelt upon by a renowned corporate mentor and a proven expert in man management who attained business excellence, Mr. Premkumar Seshadri, former Executive Vice Chairman and Managing Director of HCL Infosystems Limited. On behalf of the Managing Committee at KMA and all present here, I formally welcome you, sir, Mr. Premkumar Seshadri, to this session of KMA LeaderTalks. It's a personal pride and joy for both myself and Program Committee Chair, Mr. Asad Nair, that we too had joined HCL Limited in its then computer division in the early 90s as management trainees, where Mr. Seshadri also started off more than 3 decades ago as a trainee before charting out a celebrated career as a top management professional of our country. I also extend my hearty welcome to all the past presidents of KMA present here, members of the Managing Committee and Executive Committee, Senior Vice President, Honorary Secretary, members of KMA and other LMAs, members of the Women Managers Forum, student members, members of the media, and all invited guests to this session, which is about to begin. So without further ado, let me invite our Program Committee Chair, Mr. Asad Nair, to formally introduce the speaker and also take us through the session. For those who still do not know Mr. Asad Nair well, he is a senior past president of KMA and is a renowned corporate mentor, business coach, author, blogger, and thinker who turned his focus to academia after a successful stint as an IT entrepreneur for many years. Over to you, SR, to introduce the speaker and to take us through the session, including the Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madhav. President of KMA and Chairman of this meeting, Madhav Chandran. Distinguished Speaker of the day, Mr. Premkumar Seshadri, who also happened to be my boss in the mid-80s, actually. All respected past presidents, MC members, students, KMA members, and ladies and gentlemen. I would now read out the very brief resume of Prem, and then he would do the presentation for about 20-30 minutes, and then I would engage him, and also I would request you to put your questions on the chat board so that I can identify you by the name and present it to the speaker. The resume of Mr. Premkumar Seshadri. Mr. Premkumar Seshadri had been an integral part of HCL Group for over 3 decades since he first joined them as a management trainee. He is a former executive vice chairman and managing director of HCL Infosystems Limited. He has vast experience that spans healthcare, FMCG and consulting verticals. Prior to the MD assignment of HCL, he was with Apollo Group of Hospital as the group CEO, working very closely with the board, actively involved in the transformation of agenda of the group across go-to-market initiatives, customer experience, strategic partnerships, and globalization. Before joining Apollo Hospitals Group, Mr. Premkumar was a senior corporate officer and president of HCL Technologies Limited. Most of you may know Mr. Nada happens to be a second richest Indian who has been the executive chairman earlier. Now he has handed over the baton to his daughter. With focus on verticals in financial services, healthcare, strategic global leadership of customer proposition, innovation, alliances, partnership, and expansion. Customer centricity and business excellence has been an area of passion for Mr. Premkumar Seshadri. He is also a people person to the core and also a keen observer and mentor. There are so many things to tell about him, but let's hear those pearls of wisdom from him, particularly related to the psychological health of and safety of the employees. And subsequent to his presentation, we shall be engaging him with the conversation. Prem, all yours. Please go ahead, sir. If you want the PPT, you as you tell Prajit would actually keep changing it. Is it okay with you? And please unmute Prem. Yeah.
Thank you, President Madhav Chandran, and thank you, SR, as I have fondly known you for so many years. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you on a very interesting topic, but more than interesting, it's a very responsible topic. I'm picking a line from your keyword of ushering responsible management, because it's a very responsible requirement that we all see today. I have been a student of psychology by way of my academics and what I would call an informal practitioner. I call myself an informal practitioner because technically I was involved with business and I was a business leader. So whatever psychology that I was trying to bring in was to basically create an environment which was productive to growth. I do have a witness here, so who has worked with me for many years. So what I say, I have to be responsible about and make sure that it passes the test of SR. One thing that has always intrigued me for many years has been the whole context of seeing some extraordinary organizations, extraordinary ideas, and extraordinary people actually go across and deliver some very ordinary outcomes over a longer period of time. At the same time, on a positive note, I have also had the opportunity and have been being intrigued by the fact that I have seen ordinary concepts, ordinary leadership translating themselves into some extraordinary outcomes. Now, there could be multiple reasons. It could be reasons of timing, it could be reasons of sector, and all those things that you talk about. But one thing that I have noticed in both the dimensions, the dimension of positivity and the dimension of negativity around performing and non-performing organizations, one common thing has really been that organizations which are psychologically safe have constantly strongly correlated with very high performance, both in the context of innovation and in the context of continuous growth. There used to be a perspective in HCL, which is my alma mater, so to say, fundamentally to say that for every block of 5 years, the revenue that we generate in the 5th year, the percentage of revenue that we are already in business for should be less than 50%, which means 5 years from now, I should have a revenue 50% of it, which comes from business I was not there 5 years ago. Now, given the fact that we were in the technology industry, it seems very easy, but it was not easy. The fact that you created an extremely innovative environment for you to continuously look at newer markets, newer products, newer kinds of customers, and obviously to look at it in newer ways of engaging with customers. This innovation comes out of years and years of creating an environment where people could actually be psychologically safe. Keeping people emotionally and psychological safe has great amount of value, and some of that I will discuss in the course of this talk today. After all, problems impact people, and here is where I would call for our friend to put on the slide.
Prajit. Yeah, Prem, it's on.
Yes, here we are. Problems impact people and people impact productivity. I think this is very, I would say, a very commonsensical perspective, because if I'm not psychologically safe, it impacts me. And when I am impacted, my ability to be productive is definitely impaired. Let us have a look at some of the global and Indian trends. Slide change, please. If you look at it, I heard President Madhav Chandran talking about the kind of grief that the state is going through with respect to the pandemic. But what has pandemic done globally from a psychological point of view? Very few have really got down to understand this context. Just look at the first bar. In terms of percentage of workers who are facing mental health challenges at workplace, and what are they doing? More than 65% of them have been unable to perform fully to their potential because a difficulty concentrating, finishing tasks on time, difficulty thinking, reasoning. Now, this essentially translates itself into a very, very large focus. Almost a two-thirds of the employees are facing these kinds of challenges. One is the context of contracting COVID, but the other way to look at it is also there is a need to prioritize emotional and mental health in these times. Let's look at what's happening in India. Next slide, please. So if you look at it in this context, you are essentially finding that if you look at a survey of 18 countries, India tops highest as a place where the anxiety level is the highest. And if at these levels of anxiety, to believe that we would get optimum performance is just not possible. We have to be conscious about it. And that line that you see, the corporate hush over mental health, there is one line that comes out there. 75% say they don't have a good friend at work. Now, I've had the opportunity to work with some of the brightest and the smartest people in the country. And I could tell you that every one of us believed that we were friends to each other. That is the whole context. The fact that psychological safety is all about comradeship. It's all about being together. It's all about looking at goals as all our goals. And while there is a need for each one to move forward in life, everyone to get promotions, everyone to take new charter new courses and so on. But at the end of the day, it is very important for us to understand that there is a large vulnerability today with respect to psychological safety. I mean, if you look at that, I mean, emotional health is the next pandemic. Are we prepared to address it after it becomes one, or should we build an appropriate care today? It's no brainer. We have to do something now, because doing it later essentially translates itself into being less able to manage the situation than where we are today. Over to the next slide, please. When you look at psychological safety, there are two dimensions of psychological safety. The one dimension is the dimension of I, me, myself. I, me, myself, am I psychologically safe? Am I able to manage my anxiety? Am I able to cope with the issues that I'm day-to-day dealing with? Am I able to manage all the life events in my life which come in? And at each life event comes with its own bag of stress, which is own bag of what you call anxiety, and we are vulnerable with respect to predictability. So there is anxiousness, there is depression. All of this is I myself. How do I manage myself psychologically? So organizations today have gone across and started looking at employee assistance programs. Employee assistance programs are programs that help organizations to deal with the emotional issues of its employees. Very, very pertinent and common in the Western world for a long time. Now has become significantly important in the Indian context. And today you have a large number of organizations signing up for the emotional safety of their people. Could be through content that they curated content that they're able to see, which relate to problems that they face. Could be assessments which tell them what exactly is happening to them, and then get down to looking at it from a point of view of having counselors online virtually in an extremely confidential mode, because I'll come to that topic of needing to destigmatize this whole concept of reaching out. Fundamentally, that is one dimension of psychological safety. The second dimension of psychological safety is organizational in nature. When you look at it in the context of organization, uh, it is all about culture, leadership style, rewards and recognition. How are we structuring ourselves? How confident are our employees? How confident are our teams? How meaningful are our team meetings? How open and frank are the discussions that are taking place there about an idea, about a project, about a particular situation, or even about a deal? When you're structuring something, how do you engage with the client? And there are ideas that are coming from everybody, and some of those ideas, are you allowed to state what you think? And are you allowed to are you having the freedom to think with an open blue sky context every single time, so that you're not straitjacketed into thinking in a particular way? Are you Is the span of thinking that the organization allows you is so broad that it enables us to think of newer things every single time? How is the culture? What kind of rewards? And are you rewarded or are you punished in the context of speaking out of turn or speaking more than what is required? Now, we go to the next slide. Let's spend some time on the I, me, myself side of emotional safety. If you look at it, in one of the areas that we work on in any organization is, what is the ROI? I'm going to spend some money to take care of emotional health of my people. What is the ROI? Look at the empirical ROI available today. It is 1x spend translating itself into 6x value. And how is value calibrated? Value is calibrated by absenteeism, work performance, staff attitude and behavior norms, and relationships at work. It is based on these. And when you look at absenteeism is an issue, but bigger than absenteeism is the whole concept of presentism, where I am physically present, but I'm contributing significantly lower than my capacity. One of the things that we have always used in the companies that I work with is the whole concept of full potential. Are you full potential? Which means, if you could do X, are you consistently delivering X and X plus delta? Or are you performing below full potential? Issue is, you bring in people into your organization essentially to be full potential, but you go across and do studies across business leaders, across sales organizations and so on. You follow the same 80-20 rule. Only 20% of your people are as effective as the rest. But high performance organizations go against the 80-20. You definitely find people looking at a significantly large number of people actually attaining full potential. Now that is I mean, a good example in the technology industry. I would say for more than 2 decades prior to maybe the last 4 or 5 years, which I have not calibrated, is an organization like Cisco, where it boasted at one point of time that almost its entire business leadership were actually on full potential. Similarly, you look at stress, anxiety, and depression. They cost almost 50% of time loss. Now look at projects, look at timelines of non-availability of these people. And what World Economic Forum is talking about is that the total cost that we would be incurring is anywhere between is about 16 trillion by 2030, and is presently projected at about 1 trillion already. Now that is the kind of impact that emotional health can have on productivity. And workplace stress is cost 200 billion per year in absenteeism and lower productivity. These are all calibrated globally, and I would say that the data that we have seen, and the empirical research that our organizations are getting, is very clearly telling us that it is no different in India. The ROIs are more than 6x. They are almost 8 to 9x in India. Now, if you look at it, it is not about, when you look at psychological safety or emotional management individually, you see this Yerkes-Dodson model. It's a very simplistic graph. What it really tells you, there are 2 types of problems. One type of problem is, you see the line there called the peak performance. And at the peak performance, you definitely have stress there, because green line is saying that there is stress, which is manageable stress that is required. A lot of people believe that stress, zero stress is the best way. No, zero stress does not produce peak performance. There has to be positive stress. And when you look at it, you go up that, at the bottom of the table, you will see inactive and bored. Health, okay, there is some healthy tension, and slowly you get motivated, focused, and peak performance. Challenges are what percentage of your people you always keep them at peak performance. At the same time, taking care that they don't go down the precipice, because the other side is danger. Other side is red light, because that causes fatigue, that causes exhaustion, and obviously that causes a lot more stress to the entire organization. So the Yerkes-Dodson law is something that has stood the test of time, a very comprehensive research, which clearly talks about a need for a little bit of stress in high performance organization is definitely there. And some of that comes out of the fact that you are looking at transforming every single time, every single opportunity that you get, you are looking at trying to see how could we talk about it in the context of saying contributing to that transformation. Slide change, please. Now, this is a very interesting context. You take the Yerkes-Dodson model and then apply it on this area on a 2-axis scale. One side is motivation and accountability. On the other side is psychological safety. So if you look at it, low psychological safety, low motivation and accountability is the bottom of that pyramid that we saw in the previous slide. It is the apathy zone. I don't care what happens. I have a job. I've come here to do my job. I will do it. I will go away. I don't care what happens. I saw something which perhaps will not work. I don't need to talk about it. That is an apathy zone. This person is not contributing to your high performance ratios, because it is low on psychological safety. Why does he do it? He or she does it because they don't feel themselves to be psychologically secure. In a meeting, the bosses don't expect them to be speaking out of turn or speaking things which they are not in their theory. So there is low psychological safety, so I don't want to contribute to it. But personally, I'm not motivated. Because of low psychological safety, I'm not motivated, and I don't want to stretch myself. Very bright people, extremely bright people, but when they come into put it into a zone of a psychologically unsafe organization, it leads to motivation and accountability. It is this kind of cost that takes the whole issue to 30 trillion. It is this kind of cost. The number of people who actually come into an organization with all the vigor, enthusiasm, saying this is my first job and I'm going to thump the table and do something, and they come back and they realize that their ideas, their doubts. I mean, if I ask a question, that's a stupid question. I mean, you are put down, so that person actually moves into an apathy zone. Now look at it above. It's a highly safe psychological organization, but the individual person is not motivated and accountable. This is an individual issue. That is the comfort zone, because he feels, okay, nobody is going to ask me. This is a company, laissez-faire, as they say. It's laissez-faire. I can do what I want. I mean, I can do it at my own pace. There are no targets. There are no numbers. I can do things. I mean, if I say I've not done it, nobody is going to be concerned, because this is a psychologically safe organization. No, that's not the context of psychological safety. Okay. Now, when you look at it in the other side, very low self in terms of psychological safety, very low psychological safety, and typically very high motivation and accountability. Here is a guy who's wanting to do things, who's wanting to deliver the latest. He's wanting to deliver a great result. But unfortunately, he has a setup where he or she is not allowed to do it. That's an anxiety zone. This is the person who is the most dangerous person in the organization, because first of all, we are dealing with a highly stressed out, anxiety oriented, burnt out person. On the other side, we don't even know the fact that this person is capable of great things. Next comes the best place to be, which is the learning and performing zone. Is very high psychological safety, very high motivation and accountability. That's exactly where we need to take the organizations to. We really don't want them to be in any of the other three boxes. We really want them to be in the learning and high performance zone. And that is why I say we don't have to follow the 80-20 rule, because we can have 100% of the people in the learning and performance zone. It is possible to get there. And there are organizations which have proven that they have been able to reach that place. On the right-hand side, I just put that small graph for you to know that this was not a topic at all of discussion in 1990. Today, if you go across and take any important HR discussion, it cannot be without psychological safety. We saw some figures around it becoming 317 as an index, but fundamentally today, it is much more than that. And this is the topic which is most organization, be it MSME, be it mid sector, be it large corporation or MNCs, are very keen, because they believe that at this point of time, many of them have gone through grief in whatever forms with respect to the wave 2 and things like that. But hence they require support on a personal basis. They require support at an organizational basis. Let's take work from home as an example. Work from home has caused a set of disturbances in the person. Now, how is the organization trying to provide psychological safety at an individual level, as well as to provide it in the context of meetings and so on, so that the person is able to contribute meaningfully? Can I have a slide change, please? So let's look at it here. It all starts with, when you look at an organizational psychological safety, it all hovers around how does the organization culturally treat me? How does the organization culturally treat me? That will define what I do. In the sense that if I take the context of a choice between me being silent in meetings or me being in a position to voice my thoughts in meetings, culturally, what is the organization talking about? What is the organization ethos? When you look at it as voice, why do they choose a particular option? And it is a no-brainer to believe that largely people choose silence over voice. It is a given, and it has been also empirically proved that people would not like to strain themselves, expose themselves, not make themselves vulnerable. So silence is the reason they choose. But why do they choose this? Let's do a simple exercise. If I voice my thoughts, or I can be silent, if I have two options, who benefits? When I voice my thoughts about an idea, and I say, no, this may not work, my boss might have told you, but this may not work for the following reason. Who benefits? Organization and the customer benefits. But when I go across and be silent, who benefits? I benefit. Because I'm being silent, I'm not exposing myself. Then comes the next question. When does benefit occur? The benefit occur in the case of voice. If I say something, it may take some time for it to happen. And in between, multiple things could happen, but it may take some time for it to happen. But when does the benefit occur? If I am silent, it occurs to me right now. Because my boss thinks he accepted what I said, he is a good guy. I got the benefit now itself. This is immediate satiation of my need. I want to be acknowledged. I'm safe. Next comes the whole context. What is the certainty of benefit? In the context of voice, if I say something, then the certainty is low. What I say may not be right also. What I say may be wrong. Okay, so the certainty of benefit is low. Whereas if I'm silent, will I get the benefit? 100% you will get the benefit. So I will get the benefit of it by being silent. I will get it now, and I will be the beneficiary. It is no brainer that in a psychologically unsafe organization, you will have more people who are silent. And these silent people go and sit themselves in one of those boxes, the three boxes that we don't want them to go there. but that's the box they go and sit. Thereby, your productivity, your enthusiasm, the energy that they bring to the table, psychological energy that they bring to the table is what is lost. I'm sure, I mean, in the context of the Q&A that we'll discuss with Nair, we'll talk about our own experiences working together on some of these things, which perhaps bring out the fact that this is not a theoretical model, but this is the practical context under which organizations are running today. Now let's go to the next slide. Let's look at some of these thoughts. These are my random thoughts. And one of the things that I really wanted to do in this random thoughts is to basically, again, reinforce the context and strength of the concept that we are trying to bring out here. Okay. And one more thing before I move on to this, why is one silent? The typical granted rules that are there. Don't criticize the boss's idea. Don't speak unless you have solid data. And you know that intelligent conjecture does not mean that they have data. You can't be collecting data. Don't speak if the boss's boss is present. Don't talk negative in a group about a work that may put the boss down. Speaking up can bring career consequences. This is the fear. That is the reason why I'm silent, apart from the fact that I have three contexts. Now, let's get to some of these thoughts. If you look at it in this context, if you want somebody to think of great ideas, obviously it can't be under stress. The exaggerated context there would be that you can't be thinking of a great idea being chased by a tiger. I mean, I'm just blowing it up in that context. Fear has never been seen as a motivator. We know that. I mean, even a child these days, you can't really threaten a child to do something until you are really giving them a logical answer today. One of the contours, and many researchers is proving very clearly, is your creativity, learning, and innovation happens in open, frank organizations, because you are not limiting your thinking to the existing walls of the organization. You're going beyond the walls of the organization. The catalytic condition, as they say, which means what really is something that scares you, or the reactions that you do, being wrong, being uncomfortable, being silent. These things are the catalytic conditions that create a psychologically unsafe organization. And at the bottom, you will see three organizations, and I want to touch a minute on each of them. The price of silence. These are three companies that paid a huge price for their silence. It is well known that until 2007-2008, Nokia almost ruled the entire telephone business, mobile phone business. We have been associated as a company with them. HCL was the single, I would say, exclusive distributor of Nokia phones in this country. And I remember the day when we were running at about 84-85% market share of phones. Some crazy market share of phones. Now, within a matter of 2.5 to 3 years, you know where it went and where it is today. Fundamentally, it's a classic example where there was a team, there were great ideas, white papers, which were set down in leadership meetings inside Nokia. And every one of those meeting notes were thrown out and shredded because the CEO believed that he knew all the answers. And they went through a process which was the most painful process, and today Nokia is nowhere to be seen. Not relevant at all. They would never looked at the alternate businesses. They never looked at the boom that is going to happen in this country. I can give you anecdotally a story that this opportunity to be the distributor came to us some time back. And the target that Nokia was talking about is saying, I think we should be able to sell 500,000 phones in this country. This was 94, 95. Okay. And we may be able to sell 500,000 phones. So we put together a small team which actually did a quick and dirty market research to see this. Our team of youngsters came back with an idea in saying, maybe we could do even 1 million. So let's take it up. And that's how we took it up. And the rest is history. I mean, the telephone, in fact, I still remember the slide. Will a million flowers bloom? Was the market research report that the team put together. Will a million flowers bloom? And that million flowers were million handphones. Will we be able to sell? And today we are talking about a country which has 1 billion phones in our hands. Classic example, somebody who did not listen to psychological safety and did not listen to new ideas that were coming in from ground reports, and all of that translated into what happened to Nokia. Similar thing with Kodak. Once again, the writing was on the wall. The entire camera marketplace was reinventing itself. That was the right time for Kodak to have done something, and they had plans with them. It is not that they did not have plans. It is not that the business leadership organization was bereft of ideas. They gave them ideas, but the leadership ignored them. And then what happened to Kodak is another great example. The other one is the NASA. I think it's called, it is the Columbia, which was a disaster. Again, key statements were made during the design about some areas of potential fault which were ignored. And that's why you had a misadventure with that voyage. This is exactly where in all the three places leads to the next thing. If you think you have the answers, you should quit. Because there could be times when you could be wrong. That's what the boss thinks. Okay. Now, if you look at it in the context of the psychological safety side, look at Julia's statements, who's the director of people operations. She was actually involved in an exercise called the Project Aristotle. You can read about it, in which they were looking at what are the key attributes for Google. And there it came out very clearly. Psychological safety was by far the most important of the 5 key dynamics. And you could understand this is the context of the people head, and you can also understand why today the top 5 organizations which are equivalent in value to the rest of all companies on the stock exchange. And all those 5 companies believe that psychological safety was by far the most important of the 5 key derivatives. You take it as Apple, you take it as Microsoft, you take it as Amazon, you take it as Facebook, and every one of them essentially believe that this is the primary one. It is not an accident that they do it, and then they are what they are in terms of value. Fundamentally, that is the positive side of the whole thing. And Amy Edmondson, with whom I interact quite a bit now these days with respect to trying to put together a global psychological safety net, what she says is, do not shoot the messenger. If something is wrong, listen to it. Make it difficult to be silent. Now, the very important context is make it difficult to be silent. So that's the context that we have. The other one I want to touch upon one very important point, because today in these days we are talking about agile technology in everything. And those of you who are in the technology industry believe agile belongs to them. No, it doesn't belong to us. Technology is only a small component of the entire area of agile. Agile permeates across the organization. Can I have the next slide, please? So if you look at agile transformations, agile impacts every single function across the organization. In today's context of transformations, you have to be agile. You have to bring the context of agile together. Most agile projects fail. Most agile projects fail. And the reason why they fail is that their overwhelming trust on tools and technologies. Process and tools, process and tools. I focus on process and tools. Yes, you have to focus on process and tools, but that is not the answer. It cannot supersede psychological safety. A mistake pointed out early in the agile process can be a lot cheaper in terms of remedy, faster in terms of go-to-market, cheaper in terms of cost, to be then it going down into an MVP, minimum solution, and then you find that this did not work. It's going to be very expensive. So in any agile program, many of you here in this audience may be running agile programs and so on. Please look at it from your people context and provide the psychological safety for you to have people state their mind and actually contribute in a high potential manner. The culture of psychological safety is a necessary condition for success, especially in large agile projects. So that is what I had. And if you really want to look at it, you can answer 7 simple questions, which is the next slide. You just answer these 7 simple questions and you will know whether your organization is psychologically safe. Which is you're getting down to saying, if you make a mistake on your team, is it held against you? Are you able to bring up problems and tough issues in a meeting? Do people on the team sometimes reject others for being different? Inclusiveness. Is it safe to take a risk? Is it difficult to ask other team members for help? Do people on the team deliberately act to undermine your efforts? Are your unique skills and talents valued and utilized? A very simplistic method that Harvard Professor Amy Edmondson puts in her book, and she has a very good book. And those of you who have not read that book, I would strongly believe that you read the book. It is The Fearless Organization by Amy Edmondson. And these are the 7 questions on which she dwells upon very detailed. And these 7 questions essentially encapsulates the level of psychological safety that you have. So in summary, I'll take the last 1 minute to essentially go across and tell you that there are 2 components of psychological safety. One is the individual component. I have anxieties and issues that come up out of work or non-work situations. I need it to be managed. I need help. I expect the organization to provide me that help, provide me the network in a very confidential method so that I'm able to take care of myself at an individual level. That is one level of psychological safety. As an organization, its culture, leadership, ensure that we live in an environment of psychological safety. That is as far as the presentation goes. Thank you. Over to you, SR.
Yeah. Prajit, thank you very much, Prajit. You brought it back to the nomination. Prem, that was one of the highest realms of psychological understanding and within the organization related to individuals and the group and the collection and all the organization that we have heard over the last so many months. Thank you very much. It was very erudite and it was of a very high notch of content within that. It takes, to be very honest with you, for any individual who is listening to you on a conversation that you do now, it will take time to digest all that what you've actually put it. So thank you very much for putting it. Now the question is, now the responsibility is on to us to digest it, Prem. So it will take some time. So let's ask some questions on this and accordingly go about with this. One question that, it's a very, you just in passing, you said, saying that, 70% of the people in organizations say that they do not have a friend at work, which just in passing that you said based on a survey that you said. Now, can I ascribe the challenge to the organization as well, Prem, or is it only the individuals there actually?
No, I think it's largely the organization.
Okay.
I mean, I would come to the individual last. The individual could be the reason. And I would basically believe that the individual reason, I think would be last. I think the environment that the organization creates, an organization of companionship, an organization which basically believes that everybody is equal. I mean, everybody can state what they want and everybody deserves their time in the sun. Now that if you create that culture, the ability to create opportunities for interaction across the vertical size of the organization and horizontally across the organization, and you start feeling the cult of the organization. I mean, the pride of being an HCLite. I mean, that's what we used to talk in those days. The pride of being maybe that of any other company. The pride of being a person from Google, the pride of being a Microsoft. So all of these essentially is that you are creating the context of team spirit. The team spirit needs to be created by the organization.
But
The
Prem,
responsibility.
Prem, the challenge is, the organizations and the management also is creating an extremely competitive workplace, where people are required to fight against others and provide or deliver the best of the output, the highest of the output. So how do you rate this vis-a-vis
See,
that?
I think it may not be right to state
Yeah,
that their goals and their strategies
yeah,
peg one person in the company with another person in the company. It may so happen in some specific sporadic cases, but very largely each one has distinctly independent goals,
okay,
independent ideas, independent training methodology, and they come with independent competencies. So to me, it is the organization's responsibility to create the team spirit primarily. That doesn't take away the fact that the individuals also should contribute to it. But if you don't create, and most importantly, I would even go to the extent of saying it is the organization's requirement, but it require responsibility. I would go and say that it is the leadership's responsibility to
okay.
create that. I mean, the leaders are watching their people. If they have conflict, you know how to handle it. We have had, in our work environment, when we were working, we have had conflicts. We have had conflicts as to what you will do with some business which is taken in Bangalore or versus something in Trivandrum. We have had conflicts,
Yes,
but
we
the
have.
conflicts essentially were mitigated by leadership and the culture of the organization. We believed that yes, we knew how to maneuver ourselves through that. I mean, that's the whole logic. The whole context rests on the shoulders of the leadership.
Okay. Now, Prem, another thing that you have said, this is something actually, though it was said in passing again, is something which is very, very hard hitting. And you said emotional ill health is going to be the next pandemic. Can you
Yes.
just throw some light on this? Because it is something very, very serious.
Basically, over the last decade, the number of people who have had issues of stress, anxiety, and depression is going up exponentially. And if you look at it in the workplace, 72% of Americans are suffering from anxiety.
Okay.
Could be anywhere between mild to major. Okay, and these are people who are working in normal work environments. They are not doing some very serious moderation work and things like that, which makes them see gruesome material and things like that. But they are doing normal work, and their exposure to stress, anxiety, and depression is very large.
Has that to do with the generational shift and the technological dependence, Prem?
I would basically believe that we are going faster.
Yep.
Okay, and there is a need to be that much faster because every company is measured on a quarter basis.
Yes.
I mean, you have to publish your results. So there is definitely a increase in pace. Two, there is automation which is coming up, which is making many people redundant at various points of time, and unless they reinvent themselves. So reinvention was not a big issue. Maybe 40 years back, nobody would have thought of a at 35 years going to classes to learn something. I mean, you didn't do that. I mean, you maybe went on a foreign tour or something like that. That's a different thing. But context is you never went across and said, seriously study it. If you only if you pass that, you will be put in the next project team. Your Java is of no use. Now go across and study full stack.
Yep.
Now that whole context, essentially, what it means is that one has to keep going faster from wherever they are. But more importantly, many organizations have become rather casual with respect to the psychological safety side. Not because it is a new phenomena that is coming and hitting them.
Yep.
So you are going to see a lot of these people. And I can tell you this, I mean, forget about COVID. I know COVID is a different environment which can create a lot of grief. There's a lot of grief that people have gone through. There's a lot of people have lost near and dear ones, or are in the or were not well, and things like that. So outside that itself, we see in the company that I'm involved in, we see the number of calls have gone up exponentially. I mean, we have had organizations which had about 2%, 3% of the people calling up for some help or something, now going down going up as high as 8 to 10% or 12%. I mean, that is the level of level. And mind you, for every one person who's actually taking the effort to call up for psychological service, there are 10 others who are not calling because of destigmatization.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Because
Yeah,
of the
I was
stigma.
just going to ask you that. So how do you really destigmatize emotional ill health?
There are very comprehensive awareness programs
Yep.
which explain to them, which relate the issues to them. There is, which very clearly talks about it not being something. You're not going to a psychiatrist who's going to shrink you, as they call. They don't want to be shrinked or whatever. But here, these are basically counselors who explain, who understand, who empathize with you, and are able to give you coping strategies and define to you as to how to handle some situations. Because we get situations, if you look at our, there are people in the 20s, in the 30s, the 40s, 50s. There are various life events that they go through. Each of those life, so you just joined a company. You're going through early career blues. You're going through this whole thing. Will I be accepted here? I only studied in classroom. Can I do this work? Will I be able to answer the customer? I have never spoken to a customer before. Will I be able to answer them? That stress comes in. Then comes the whole context of, okay, I mean, it's time to get married, how to do it, how will I do that stress that comes in. If there is a delay, there is stress. If there is no delay, there is stress. So these are kinds of things that come up. Then comes this whole thing about, when do I have a child? Should we do it now, later? All of this at various, and then there is middle age issues, then there is pre-retirement issues, then comes the whole aging issues. You have to come to terms with your own aging. That is the truth. So all of these issues contribute various kinds of things to people. And today it has become very, very important that they be addressed, because if they are not addressed, they would essentially be, will land up in actually blowing up. Just to let you know, in this organization that I'm talking about, we have almost saved 5,000 people who are about to hurt themselves.
My God.
That is the size of issue that is happening, and all of these are corporate workers. They are not consumers outside who are outside the workforce. They are within the workforce.
Prem, we see HR as a major function within organizations, and it is normally deemed that it is a job of HR to identify and take care of this thing, of course, with the help and advice from the management. But many organizations run business HR. How many psychologists and sociologists are there in the HR team of even bigger companies, multinationals as well as transnationals in India, Prem?
So distinctly, see, the whole context of social worker intermediating is one context, and today the role of HR, they are very multidimensional, and in that context, that's the reason why, I mean, I really would want to talk about an organization, but typically there are organizations which support this as a helpline, because this is a specialized work. This is extremely specialized work, and it is not something that you can outsource it and HR person can be trained on it and then saying you become a counselor tomorrow. I mean, you got to be a counselor, which is a full-time job.
Okay.
And it needs to be done in that way. I would basically believe that it is not something that is to be done in-house, because if it is an in-house counselor, the stigma of that person going to that counselor is even higher, because there is local. I mean, whereas when I'm talking to somebody outside, it is easier for me, because I believe that I can call them somewhere and I can talk to them. I won't be exposed. I mean, that's a fear. But if it is an internal person, you get scared, because HR comes to know. I mean, they will write it down in their book and saying, this is what it next appraisal of mine, and next promotion of mine, I may lose out because
Yes.
I'm a little emotionally drained.
I get the point. Now you have said about this as positive stress in the quadrant that you've actually mentioned. You also mentioned about the positive stress. Okay. Can you just elaborate upon the positive stress and its benefits, Prem?
Just to believe that life is all about walking in the clouds is
Yeah.
not it is. You have to basically have certain motivation and accountability. And this motivation and accountability, you should have an aspiration. There has to be an ambition. If you can't deal with a bunch of people who have no aspiration or no ambition, As far as I'm getting my monthly salary and I'm going, I'm fine. I really don't want to strain myself. I don't want to do this. Work-life balance is important to me. Yes, work-life balance is important, but work-life balance also has work in it.
Yeah.
Okay. Why? You can have the life, but there is also work in it. So
Yes.
there is a need for a little bit of adrenaline to actually flow, to be in a position to say, yes, this is a positive stress. I like that. I mean,
Okay.
why do movies have a climax? Why do movies have a climax and make you think about something which, oh, will this happen, that? They are creating a little bit of anxiety in you for you to choose between things. And when you choose something, then you realize, oh, okay, this is the way it happened. So that anxiety is essentially that is the entertaining part of it. You do it at a level which is positive. You do it at a level which is manageable, and you are not overdoing it. You reach your peak performance. Don't strain yourself beyond that. But stay at peak performance, and that is a moving bar, though. I mean, that's a moving bar, and as you keep looking at it, you will people get into strenuous situations at work. Now, if I don't have an ability to manage anxiety of strenuous stress and suddenly that comes up through an exception basis, then I may not be able to deal with such situations.
Okay. Peak performance also vegetabilize faster, don't you think so?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, it is a moving target. It never is a fixed target. If it was a fixed target, then it is fine, but it is always a moving target.
All right, all right. You said about this apathy zone, comfort zone, high performance zone, and the anxiety zone. Very well explained by you. But how does organize? See, I have always seen that people are always looked at by HR and the reporting authorities with certain level of prejudices. Do you think so? Don't you think so?
If there are prejudices, the organization is not psychologically safe.
Okay.
That's the context. If there are prejudices, if they believe that A will do only this way, B will only do this, he's not capable of anything better, I will not give this to him, her or her, I will give it to somebody else. I mean, if these prejudices work in this place, that is where I use the word in one of the questions is, are you inclusive? If you are not inclusive, then you are not psychologically safe. You are creating an unsafe environment because of these prejudices. The primary context of psychological safety is zero prejudices.
Okay. Prem, yet I personally know of, as well as we have read in many cases about HR functions within organization spoiling the organizational culture.
Yeah, like it is true. It is true to some extent. It is, but at the same time, generalization may not be right.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
there are definitely many organizations which have actually got some great things done because of the HR policies and the way HR has treated its people. Now, these days, I think they realize that there are some exceptions. I mean, people do look at HR as a controlling company rather than an enabling company. If I look at my job as an enabling company, then I wouldn't be worried about, no, I wouldn't harm anybody. But if I look at my job as a controlling company, I decide whether you get 1 increment or 2 increment, and I decide what it is. Those kinds of things are all, I mean, those happen, but broadly, organizations which have a lot more open culture, I mean, these are not some things which are common there.
Prem, I remember having read HBR some time back, which says that actually it is time organizations recruited sociologists and psychologists and anthropologists in organizations than MBAs from the big time schools that we see. What's your opinion on that?
See, the recruitment philosophy of it and say bring these kind of people inside the company is not good enough.
Okay.
If your culture is not changing.
Right.
I mean, I would basically believe that you should bring a chief culture officer. Okay. And that culture officer should create this culture. Automatically, you don't need specialists to do it. You can do it yourself. Teams will do it, leaders will do it. Create a culture which is there, and that culture will stay forever.
You had given us the examples of Nokia and Kodak in telling that, okay, if the CEOs who knew all the answers, it is time they quit. Okay, will you please elaborate upon this?
No, it's basically in both these cases, somebody felt, or some bunch of people felt, that they know everything. They put down all good ideas in terms of what they were supposed to do, and some of the things that they went on to did is what maybe a Samsung did or Apple did. I mean, the kind of lead, the power, the money that was available with Nokia was not small. They were running an empire of global market share of about 50% plus, and take a country like India, market share of 85%. I mean, you can't expect anything better than that. And they were catering to a very large population. So same with Kodak. India is also a big Kodak country.
Yeah.
I mean, the Kodak movement, as we all grew upon fundamentally. So I mean, these were organizations which had the wherewithal to actually create new and newer businesses. I just told at the very beginning of this session how we at HCL always looked at it and saying that 5 years from now, 50% of our business should come from businesses which we are not there.
Okay.
Now, if that was so, Kodak would have reimagined itself.
That's right.
Nokia would have reimagined itself.
Right.
That reimagination happens because you listen to every voice.
Yes.
Every voice matters. That's the core. Every voice matters. And when every voice matters, you will definitely see the organization is a lot more vibrant.
Yeah. Prem, there is one question on the chat which is from Suresh Kumar to TK. He asked this question, not though directly relevant, but then it's a side question. Most of the books on psychology are written by Western authors. Is it because we in India do not have authors capable of writing books on psychology or on the problems of the Indian scenario have not been analyzed or studied properly? Are we to go a long way in getting good books on psychology from Indian authors? What is your take on this, Prem?
I would basically believe that the observation is very valid. I think we are not getting, there are a lot of books, but not of the quality that one would basically put their hands around. There is a dearth of such authors, dearth of such experiences. Okay. Experiences in psychology in India are largely at the psychiatry side and not the psychology side. Yeah. The psychiatry side is MD medicine, which is a different context altogether. We are not discussing that side of the thing. As far as the psychology is concerned, this has not been a subject which has been researched well. See, one of the whole context that really happens is that the more research one does, the more books we can produce. Yeah. So if you look at the number of PhDs in psychology that are coming out, they are very minimal.
Yes.
They're very minimal. And many of them are choosing paths which are largely back into academics, but not creating more research. Okay. The amount of research in the country in this space is very little. And corporate India has not imbibed this to the extent that they may have imbibed other business principles in HR.
Prem, my last question to you is not exactly related to the subject. I mean, it related to the subject, but it's a little personal too. What are you doing these days on these matters?
Well, we basically have, I'm advising and mentoring one of my portfolio companies, which is the largest emotional health provider in this country, called one-to-one-health.net. They are the largest provider in this space. We cover almost about 800 to 900 companies whose entire psychological emotional health is managed by us. And typically, they cover about 4 million lives. That means 4 million employees are covered
40 lakh people, no?
Yeah, 40 lakh people are covered by this employee assistance program, which is one of the things that we are doing. We have set up now a research wing, which is essentially addressing the question of the books on one side, but also corporate research in terms of looking at various kinds of functions and so on.
Prem, it has indeed been a great privilege as well as a pleasure talking to you. Actually, by the end of such sessions, if between you and me, we should actually have a mascot punch by the end of it. Okay, with great pleasure, I would definitely hand you back to my president, Madhav Chandran. Madhav, all yours. Unmute.
Thank you so much, and it was such an erudite session showing ample evidence of his rich learnings and experience at various organizations at the leadership levels. I mean, dealing with an omnipresent issue which is not spoken aloud and addressed scientifically or rather professionally, either at the individual level or at the organization levels, and talking about with such authority, I'm sure those who are present here would have had a real great learning experience from a maestro, I would say, because it is not just a theory he was talking about. I mean, like SR said, those slides were really having in-depth knowledge in that. I mean, it will take some time for people to really understand and digest the whole thing, but your experience at those levels, practicing those points which you mentioned, was very evident in your talk. Great learning session, I must say, for all of us, not only for the many B school students present here, but most importantly for the so-called seniors and the managers who are present here. I mean, the creating a position for a chief cultural officer and to create a culture for the organization to stay forever. I mean, these kind of points, definitely many of us who are present here will definitely take away. And the positive stress, as SR again repeated, the positive stress part of it, and you saying that no stress is like a boredom, or rather the climax of a movie, why that entertainment factor in anxiety being created. That's a very, very, very simple example which you quoted to understand that stress is needed. We all say that when you are stressful, it's actually a bad thing, but you said butterflies in the stomach is a good thing to have, to get success and to reach that particular right quadrant on top. That is really, really good. And zero prejudices for psychological safety. That's something which is a real good takeaway for all of us. And quoting Madam Amy's book of Fearless Organization, in fact, Fearless Individual itself, as you rightly said, that is what I would take away. And thank you so much for that wonderful session. And I'm sure all of us are thankful to you. And I've got our honorary secretary to propose a formal vote of thanks. But then, I must express my sincere gratitude to you for such a great session, real pearls of wisdom coming out from a real man of practice who have done it all and has preached it from his experience rather than just from the textbook. Well, before I hand it over to our secretary, let me just make a couple of announcements here for all those who are present here. We have the Women Managers Forum event for the month of September coming up, always as done on the second Thursday of the month, that is on 9th September. It will be a session by Ms. Sindhamare Gokulakrishnan, Chief Executive Officer at Beta Monks Innovations Private Limited. She is a successful serial entrepreneur who won many awards for her activities in diverse domains. That will be happening on 9th September at 6 p.m. And we have the very important memorial lecture, third one of our calendar year, coming up in September. That is on 16th September. We have the MKK Nair commemorative lecture going to be delivered by none other than the Chief Secretary of Kerala, Dr. VP Joy IAS. That is on 16th September at 6 p.m. And we also have the next edition of the Rendezvous with the CEO planned with Mr. Dilip Uman, the CEO of ArcelorMittal. For those who have not attended this series of sessions, this is a new event at KMA which we started last month, where we are featuring highly successful CEOs of the public and private sector companies in conversation with the chairman of the KMA CEO Forum, former executive director of BPCL Kochi Refineries and current CEO of Nayara Refineries Gujarat, Mr. Prasad Panikar, and co-chair of KMA CEO Forum, Mr. Madhu Nair, chairman and managing director of Cochin Shipyard Limited. The first of the series had the chairman and managing director of FACT Limited, Mr. Kishore Rangta, and the next edition will be having Mr. Dilip Uman, CEO of ArcelorMittal. That is on, the date is yet to be fixed. It will be coming up in the second week of this month. And that's it for the announcements. So please stay tuned for our notices on WhatsApp, email, and SMS, and for more details on these events and even more for the month of September. Now it's up to our Honorary Secretary, Chartered Accountant, Mr. Jomon George, to propose the vote of thanks. Over to you, Jomon. You got to unmute. You got to unmute yourself.
He's unmuted, but his voice is unheard.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are very meek, very meek, very meek. Your sound has to go up. No, no.
We have a problem with your audio.
You have a earphone, Jamon?
I think.
Speak again. Let's see whether we can. Yeah, speak again, please.
Just switch the video off and come closer to the phone and talk.
No,
Oh,
sorry, Jamon.
you have a problem.
Madhav, yes.
I think, sir, you have the honor of proposing the vote of thanks to your boss.
Joman, sorry, quirk of fate. That is what actually happened. In fact, I was seriously looking forward because Joman, when he does the vote of thanks, a lot of pearls of wisdom comes out, and his observation of the whole thing is fantastic, and he's able to reproduce that in contextual this thing. And we are missing that, Joman. We thought probably the technology, if it has been okay, we would have heard you. Uh, Prem, but you see, I have always been calling you Prem. It has become so informal. People maybe think that I'm actually speaking to you on a Takia Kalam basis. Sorry, Mr. Premkumar Seshadri. It indeed had been a big privilege for the whole members of Kerala Management Association, the students, the managers, the managing council members, etc., to have attended this. And I'm telling you, there's plenty of takeaway on this session, as Madhav had said. I only wish that organizations start looking at the philosophy of bringing in psychological safety, emotional safety to people, so that, as you said, so that all those leakages that is happening in terms of the ROI could be actually plugged. And I sincerely hope that you will come out with a book or two on this subject, so that we would like what Suresh Kumar had said. Now that books on this subject is lacking in India, probably people like you should pen down your thoughts on this to see that the industry, the people, the individuals, and the professionals benefit from this. From the very bottom of the heart, personally myself, and on behalf of everybody who is present with me in this, I sincerely thank you for your great presentation, your presence, and for your time. We would look forward to continue our association with you in these matters as time go by. I hope you will welcome us whenever we approach you. And now, Madhav, is there a memento that goes to?
Yes, of course. It's a real
Please go
time
ahead and talk.
one. Though it is shown online, it will come to you physically by courier. There's a signature memento of KMA, which gives a proof that you were here, at least online in a virtual platform, and talking to us.
Thank you very much.
I take this opportunity to thank everyone who had taken time to come and attend themselves and see this, listen to the presentation of Prem. As President had said that we have many events coming up. In fact, he hasn't talked about the LeaderTalk as well as the startup conversation of the month that is going to happen. All that will have a big feast as far as September is concerned. Thank you very much. Take care. Be safe. And
Thank you.
I think the meeting, I would get back to the president to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you very
And
much. Wish you all safe time ahead.
Thank you. We need very much, actually. Thank you so much. And thank you to the sponsors also for making these events highly successful, and so that we can do it in such kind of grandeur. Thank you, audience. Meeting is adjourned. It's open for any kind of comments.